And it's another warm Tuesday night down here in South Florida. I'm sure the rest of the country is following suit. Not really. We'd like to welcome you back to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show with your hosts, Mark Lindsay and myself, Eloy Escajedo. What's going on, Mark?
Well, if you think 36 degrees is warm, then yeah, it's another warm night. That's 2 Celsius for you guys who use the French system. It's just a typical autumn day here. It finally stopped raining, and now the clouds are parting, which means it's going to get cold overnight. And they're talking about going to hit 26 tonight. I know there's people out there going, 26? I wish it would get up to 26. Yeah, now you know why I don't live there. I don't like cold weather. So I know I'm in the wrong place for it.
It
But
got
other than
down.
that, how was your day?
It got down to 71 degrees today.
Oh, and me without my muff. Jeez. 71. I live for 71. That's
This
about the perfect temperature, you know that.
it really was pleasant. It was the first pleasant day since last year. We don't because it goes the whole year hot.
Yeah.
There's cool moments under a tree or
Mm.
inside a car with AC,
Mm.
but if you're out and about, you're sweating bullets.
Yeah, see, you guys are just the
Bullets.
opposite. We look forward to summer so we can thaw out, and you guys look forward to winter so you can cool off.
Yeah, dude. It's just well, I don't know if everybody because over here people start busting like I wouldn't be surprised if I spotted people, which I didn't because I didn't head to any of the places that I do. I wouldn't be surprised if they were wearing like hoodies or an extra shirt and stuff like
Jackets.
that's how exaggerated people are here.
Yeah, we noticed that in Hawaii. If it got, below oh 75, they're busting out their jackets. Oh, it's chilly out tonight. It's like, chilly? Are you
Yeah.
kidding? This is t-shirt weather.
You know what they're really saying, right? They're saying, "Oh, this is a great opportunity so I can put on
I
my
can
jacket that I
show off.
only use like once a year."
Yeah,
That's really what they're saying.
yeah.
You know.
Man, I don't know, but it is what it is. We're powerless to do anything about it. So either adapt or move. Those are really your choices. Either adapt to the weather or move. So, oh man, you and I started having a discussion last week a little bit when you went to post a link to a video on the Trampled Underfoot podcast uh, Facebook page. And since the last time you had gone over there, Facebook has changed the interface.
Again?
No, no, it was last week you discovered they had changed the
Oh,
interface.
I'm
You had
sorry.
a hard time getting into to find the right place to post that link.
That's right.
And that started me on a little bit of a tirade that I didn't really get into because I wanted to talk about it this week. But
Mhm.
we here at the Trampled Underfoot podcast love our technology. We praise it all the time. Talk about this is great, and we wouldn't know each other without this technology.
That's right. We would not know each other without this technology.
But my
Unless we were both subscribed to some sort of magazine, like maybe radio aficionado, and we saw each other's right, and we became pen pals, and then for 30 years, continue.
did that ever happen? Did you ever meet anybody through a magazine subscription? I didn't. Of course, I didn't subscribe to those magazines. But
Maybe,
anyway, that's beyond my.
maybe. Go ahead, go ahead. I was gonna be more ridiculous and more ridiculous. Continue.
But my question is, have we gotten to the point where we can say, let's stick a fork in it and see if it's done?
In terms of,
Well, I'm not talking about like medical technology or manufacturing technology or even distribution, things like that. What I'm talking about is personal technology for us. Because, Facebook was a big thing. And yeah, I could see it needed updating after about, the first 10 years. It needed to adapt because more and more people were using it and they couldn't keep up. I could see
Mhm.
that. But now it seems to me that their updates, they're just quote unquote updating and upgrading and improving it just to change it. It's not accomplishing anything. It's not, nobody benefits. I mean, is there any benefit to the way it's laid out now than say 6 months ago? Because I sure don't see it. Because I think what they're doing is they're tinkering with things they don't need to tinker with, and they're just overcomplicating stuff because they can. You
You
know
know
what I
what?
mean?
You know what I think though. To one, there's many roads you can go down, but this is what I think about, or this is what popped into my head when you were saying it, and you tell me. I think that you
Mhm.
and I, to include myself, and maybe a lot of the people out there, I think that we suffer from, and this is just an avenue of this thing that you're talking about. We
Mhm.
suffer from the Spider-Man movie syndrome, or you could call it the Superman movie syndrome, or you could call it the Batman movie syndrome. And I'll explain.
Okay.
When we were kids,
Mhm.
Batman was out,
Yeah.
and there was iterations of Batman as the decades moved on. We were sitting here in 2023 or 2022, about to cross the we're about to cross that threshold. Um, and we've been through how many iterations of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and this and that. They reinvent the wheel. And by the way, every time they reinvent the wheel, it's kind of like what you're saying. Even though there are artificial, I'll call it artificial changes,
Mhm.
the nuts and bolts of the story is the same rehashed, boring, I get the plot before the movie starts situation. So the reason I'm saying that we may suffer from that syndrome is, I guess you can make the connection now. We have this software that we use online or whatever,
Uh-huh.
and they're updating it. Maybe not for you and me, but there's always
Right.
newcomers coming to, you
You're
know.
absolutely right. But when what I'm getting at it is it possible for any of these developers to sit and look at a page and go, you know what, that looks good. Let's leave it alone.
No,
We
there's
don't need to mess with it. We don't need, because they're overcomplicating things. I'll give you another example. Okay. Our printer, a brother laser printer that was about 12 years old, finally died.
Mhm.
It just
Conked
quit
out.
working totally. So we're like, you know what? That was real good. That lasted 12 years. And for an electronic device, that's pretty ding dong good.
Mhm.
So we went and we got a new brother printer, brought it home, and that thing has been nothing but a pain in the butt ever since. What I want is I want a printer I can bring home, plug one end of the USB cable into it, and plug the other end of the cable into the computer, and then share that printer through my home network with the other computers on the
Yeah,
network.
look who wants a nice and comfy existence with his printing
Real
regime.
simple, right? You
Well,
can't do that. You can't do that. It's all got to be Wi-Fi now.
I could see you in a cave during caveman era and say, "You're doing it all wrong. Why are you using two freaking rocks? Come here.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is taking too long." You're
Yes.
like the guy in the
You're
airplane.
making candles. No, dip the wick into the beeswax twice, Jessup. You know.
You're like the from the story you said that few weeks back where you said, what was it, the joke where the guy's on the plane and he turns on, he's, I can't get Wi-Fi here, and the guy said, can you wait a minute, it's beaming from outer space,
Yeah. Yeah,
can you just
really.
give it a
I just want simple. I
yeah.
don't need a lot of fancy stuff. I just want to be able to. Yeah, I see Steve is saying Mark is a Luddite. No, I just don't need your fancy Wi-Fi stuff. Let me plug it into the back of the computer. It worked for 12 years. There's no need to change it. There really is no need to change it. You know, I don't think I'm a rotary dial guy, although that worked for about 50 years. I understand the need to change that. That's legit. But forcing you to use Wi Fi and try to get one, two, three, four, five computers to hook up to that one printer, I'll put it to you this way: we've had it 6 months, and I'm still putting documents on a thumb drive and taking them in there and printing them off the other computer in there because I can't get it to connect with this computer. It'll connect and say, oh, yes, we're reading that computer's there. But then when I try to go ahead and print a document, it just loads it into the queue. I have to put it on the thumb drive, take it in there to print it. So I'm worse off with the new computer, with the new printer, than I was with the old printer. All I'm saying is don't overcomplicate things. Just make some things simple.
Let me ask you a question about your specific scenario of the printer. Is it hooked up? Oh no, you were saying that the Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to hard connect it with a Ethernet style thing to your setup, you would probably not have the problems anymore. Of course, that's not what you want. You want
right. No, you're absolutely right, and that's what I want. The problem is that's not an option. I can't just plug it in to my computer like I had before and share that printer through the home network to the other computers here. Yeah. That's what we did before. That's not an option. It has to go through Wi-Fi, and it decides when it's going to print for who. You know,
it's a printer with an attitude.
Yeah. It's got a mind of its own. It's got an attitude, and it's a selfish bastard. That's what it is. It's
welcome to AI.
It prints what it wants to print when it wants to print it, and if it's not interested in what you want to print, it's like, yeah, maybe later.
Well, welcome to AI. This is the future, where right now we kind of control technology, but in the future, technology is going to be so advanced that it actually can calculate out, and so it might be like one day you walk in and say, yeah, Alexa, go ahead and get that pizza ordered, and you know what I like, and I need those papers printed out.
You know what you just did.
And
you know what you just did.
What?
There's 4 people out there right now that have those Echo Dots that are canceling that pizza order that you just made for them.
Extra anchovies, and pineapple, please. No, but like you'll be doing that, and then the AI will say, "Mark, you haven't been acting nice to me lately." So
yeah, like, really.
And he'll say, "So I'm not gonna purchase that." Well, then I'm gonna go ahead and order it myself. You say, and she said, "I have canceled your subscription to your telephone company." you cheeky bastard.
Little Caesars is 2.5 blocks away. If I want cheap, cheesy pizza, I can go get it.
So you will beat the system.
Yes. See, that's the thing. That's I don't like being hemmed in on something.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like being forced into something. Just give me the option. And the option is put a USB plug on the back of the ding dong printer. Let me plug it into the computer the way I had it before. Nope, not going to let you do that. You got to run through Wi-Fi and set up a whole new network. All right, you bastard.
I mean,
but so I guess my point is I can see advances in technology, and I can see things that are improved for the better.
A lot of things.
I'm not suggesting we go back to Model A Fords. What I am suggesting is quit overcomplicating things just for the sake of overcomplicating them. Leave us choices. Leave us options. Just leave us the option.
They take a button that's on the left side and say, you know what? Although our users have gotten used to that button in that one spot, let's go ahead and relocate it somewhere, and let's
Yes.
put an advertising thing on top of it, so they have to
Right.
go crawling under the advertising window
Right.
into the yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, no, you have to click a little X in exactly the spot. And I mean, it's like 3 pixels tall. And you're
mhm,
sitting here on your 32-inch screen, and it still looks like a gnat landed on your monitor.
yeah,
You got to get up there and find that sucker and hit it exactly right. Because if you don't, a new browser tab opens up, and then it opens a pop up. And,
mhm.
no, the first 30 days I made $425,000. Ask me how, that kind of thing. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, the button was right here on the top right of the screen. Not only did we move it to the top left, now it's red on a red background. So you got to hunt for it.
Yeah, yeah, they make it they fart around with things too much because remember they're um trying to, maybe it's something like they're the new guys in that department,
Well,
and they want to.
I think they're trying to justify their jobs.
Yeah,
If we don't do this, we won't have a job. We
yeah, because
can't be the guys to sit here and take care of something if it goes wrong. We have to be the guys that are constantly tinkering stuff by adding other little things over here that send you to 404 pages that don't work. So
Mhm.
I'm not
I don't.
talking to you, Steve. I'm talking about these mopes
I
up
just
above.
I'll just say this. I'm still sticking to my, and it gets worse as time goes on.
Mhm,
There's nothing better than a workstation
mhm.
and a big ass screen where you can actually see what you're doing
Yep.
and interact in a comfortable. The phone is so small, and like I can't enjoy a movie on a phone. I can't enjoy anything on. It's only practical when you're on the go and you have to do something quick.
Yeah.
But to enjoy it,
Yeah.
maybe people are different, obviously. But for me, there's nothing like
Well,
the bigger the screen and the
yeah.
more stationary the tower or
Well,
whatnot.
if you look at how big TVs are now, next time you happen to be in Wally World, go through the electronics section and just take a look. And you see how, I mean, some of these damn things are half the size of the wall they're hanging on. A 72-inch screen is not uncommon. And folks, that's 6 feet. A 6-foot screen is not uncommon. So people agree with you because they are extremely popular. I mean, it's hard to find a TV under 32 inches anymore. And so most folks like a bigger screen. But yeah, they're also trying to work it off of a mobile app. And it's like, holy cow, come on, man.
Yeah, there's all sorts of wars going on now.
Mhm.
Not to get too much into the weeds with it, but just as a surface thing, unless for whatever reason one would. But there's all sorts of battles now with huge companies that are internet
Mm-hmm.
titans.
Yeah.
Be it Twitter with
Mm-hmm.
the Elon Musk fighting it out with like Apple. Like
Uh-huh.
Apple, there was like a little, and I don't know at this point because they were fighting where Apple wasn't advertising on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and so Elon something or other threatened to, well, we're going to make an some sort of brand new equivalent to Apple something or
Mm-hmm.
other. I forget the details, but the point is that they're always this battle within this world, and I
Yeah.
wonder how much damage does it do to any of these companies. It's kind of like they're massive companies and there might be damage here and there, but all this to do is kind of like the gossip column um at your local grocery store shelf where, oh, look what Days of Our Life, look what's happening on Days of Our Life, because these people, I mean, so it people like the entertain, it's a form of
Yes.
entertainment to see all the drama.
It is, and that's the way the press reads it. And okay, that's fine. It can be taken at face value as far as their the entertainment value of the fight, you know.
Yeah.
But I actually like to see companies get into battles like that because usually what happens is either service or the product improves. Because let's just say company A sees a demographic that company B is not servicing, they're not advertising to. they'll come up with something that services everything that company B was servicing, plus this other demographic.
Hmm.
And that improves service for everybody. I'll give you, for instance, this is kind of off the subject, but not really. Um, there are people out there who legitimately have problems with gluten, celiac disease being one, various allergies. Um, and the gluten-free thing became the hip, new trendy thing. Oh, we're going gluten-free. Oh, do you have a disease? No, gluten is bad. Well, we've been eating it for centuries. Gluten's fine, unless you're sensitive to it. But because of that trend, the amount of gluten-free options out there have really opened it up for people who have legitimate need for that,
Right.
is where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with sugar-free. People who are diabetic have more options out there now available to them because that became trendy. Well, these battles between companies usually end up with that result, even if it's small, that service or the product is improved and everybody wins. It doesn't always turn out that way, but often enough to where I like to see the fight. I like to see companies battle with it.
Yeah, you're right. It does serve that they want to keep up with the Joneses on their
Mhm.
level, um, and by default or by hook or crook, they end up making a slightly better, in many cases,
Mhm.
product because of the competition and the pushback and the fights and whatnot. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
It,
yeah.
it doesn't always turn out that way. I mean, there have been a few uh Linda says, so how does that explain kale? Dear, nobody can explain kale. Nobody.
It's a good way to fill up if you're on a diet, um, and if you lather it with some sort of thing, it almost hides the bitter taste.
You know how we do it? We put a lot of coconut oil, natural, organic coconut oil into the pan, and a lot of it, like 3 tablespoons, and get that melted down and stirred in there because it makes sliding it off into the garbage can so much easier. So, um, Steve, yet you aren't happy with Facebook competing. I don't know what gave you that idea. Competing with who? Facebook can compete with whoever they want to compete with. So I don't I don't get that.
If you can, what is it, the word, break it down more.
Yeah, explain further.
It's
Facebook
hard
can
to
compete with whoever they want to compete with. I
it's
mean,
it's hard to do when it's just a chat, and then
mhm,
people, it's hard to, we not picking up on the right moment
yeah.
of what he's
Um,
pointing to.
I have preferences.
Oh,
I'm not much for Facebook video. I've tried it a couple times. I don't like the interface.
he might be saying in terms of moving buttons around and this and that. I don't know. But look, here's the thing. I will say this. If I were to, oh, he made a, let's see what he said.
Okay, Facebook makes changes to compete with TikTok and YouTube, but you don't want the changes. Oh, they can make the changes, but the changes that they have made don't have anything to do with TikTok or YouTube. I'm talking about you going into like a business page. The interface has changed. And now you got to hunt for it where you used to be able to just go over to that page and you were right there on the main page. You had a menu off to the side. Now they've combined menus and you've got to go through 4 different pages to get to the one you want that used to
Look,
be the default. So,
look, we're creatures of habit.
yeah.
If you have a mall that you frequent and they
Mhm.
always change the store locations every time you go, like,
Uh-huh.
hey, wasn't the shoe store over here? Oh no, we just
Yeah.
moved it randomly just to mix things up.
Mhm.
That's not, so it's kind of like that.
Well, yeah,
You know,
and then changing the name of it. It's the same thing. They still sell the same shoes, but now it's called home fries.
Yeah.
Or,
The
little,
Bagel Emporium, and they sell shoes.
yeah, Misty Mountains. It's like, huh? How
Yeah,
about
it's
shoe store?
so changes and improvements aren't without its um growing pains as
Well,
well. But
if you are increasing the level of complexity, I don't think you can make the argument that the change is for the better. Because I don't care how much of a geek or a nerd you are. If you're into IT, if you're a software developer, or who you are, I think we would all agree that easier is better.
yeah,
So if your changes increase the level of complexity, please rethink it.
yeah.
You know,
Also, redundancy and the complexity is an important point because I mean, and then the habitual thing,
hmm
like button moving or the functionality of buttons and stuff.
hmm
When people get into a habit of it, but again, it's like the Spider-Man syndrome that I was
yeah,
saying. Um, we're used to it's they keep updating things for a new audience and
yeah.
whatnot, but people that have been there, done that, and have a system down, or have seen the
Well,
Spider-Man movie and could not need another one for ever in a day.
well, see, and there's to your point. When you and I were kids, there was one Spider-Man, there was one Batman, and there was one Superman. Now you have to qualify that and say, "Oh no, I prefer the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man." Because,
Yeah,
as to your point, there have been so many.
yeah,
You don't like the Tom Holland Spider-Man? No, I prefer the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
yeah. It's too much, and
You
it's
know,
like, but it's too much for us because
I
we've
mean,
already seen X amount of like,
I get it. They're making millions off of these movies. I get it. I really do. I understand. But that's kind of more on the pedestrian side. Just like there were, how many James Bonds have there been? I mean, there's different eras of Bond, and that's fine. Uh, more than one Spider-Man, more than one Batman, Superman, it doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, Robin says, I like the cartoon Spider-Man the best. When I was a kid, that was the only Spider-Man there was the cartoon Spider-Man.
in the
And
80s. Oh, go ahead.
every kid knew the theme song.
In the 80s, they had a Spider-Man movie that, or made for TV type thing, and it came out in the 80s, and I sat and watched it when it came out,
Mhm.
and for the whole movie, Spider-Man shows up like two or three times because
Yeah.
they didn't have the technology necessarily, and I guess the plot and doesn't, but it appears like three freaking times,
Mhm.
and I felt so cheated.
Mhm.
It was free on TV, but that's not the point. I was like,
Yeah.
I wanted wall to wall spot. Now Spider-Man is in every clip just about,
Yeah.
and I couldn't be bothered with it.
Well, so, advances in technology are great, but adding more complexity to something that should be simple, I think they really need to rethink it. Because
Yeah,
I know I'm not the only one that has this opinion. I can't be. I just can't be. But give me something I can plug in with a cord and plug into my computer so I can share it with my home network that I've had set up for however many years. We buy new devices, we plug it in, I get it set up, it's added to the home network, everything's great until that evil printer came along. And I'm regretting buying that brother printer. I'm about ready to sell it
so
and
you're
get
you're
something
you're
else.
think so you're thinking more. It's like an oh brother printer.
Yeah, it went from being a brother printer to an oh brother printer. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, if it'll work, I'll print up a label and change it from brother to oh brother.
Oh brother.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your um buttons and Facebook, I will say this: if you offer me Facebook compared to Twitter,
hmm
I'm totally down with Facebook. I like the setup in terms of its general idea where you get a news feed.
Mhm.
I understand it way better than Twitter. Twitter's got all these little
Th-
weird tweet and this and that. Like to me, tweet means nothing.
Yeah, they all have their idiosyncrasies, and I get what Steve's means about competing with TikTok and YouTube. Um, but the difference, for instance, the difference between Facebook and Instagram are becoming less and less because they've changed Instagram as well. I'm not very savvy with Instagram. I do very little with it. Um, I'm more savvy with Facebook, but I tend to do less with it these days simply because I don't have much time.
Yeah.
But I've never used TikTok. I have no interest in it. I do use YouTube. They all have their look, they all have their layout, they all have their idiosyncrasies.
Hmm.
And that's fine because they're different platforms. They should be different.
Yeah.
So to try to make Facebook look more like TikTok is lost on me because I don't use TikTok and I really don't give a damn about TikTok. Um, to make Facebook video look more like YouTube is lost on me because I don't like Facebook video. That's a personal choice. A lot of people prefer it and they love it and
Mm.
they have a lot of success with it and more power to them. Great. It's just I prefer the YouTube interface. I prefer how that platform operates. So that's the one I use.
Yeah. Well, YouTube is the better one for video, but there are good things on Facebook that a video might pop up and stuff. But what I like about Facebook more than Twitter is that it's more friend and family oriented, where you
Yeah.
have little groups that are formed where you get,
Mhm.
your friends and your fam, and then you can see, the posts and interact and whatnot.
Mhm.
But on Twitter, it seems to be a battle
Yeah.
of all sorts of things, and it's just so darn like pompous and negative, and it's short. You can't really write out a whole thing. I mean, it's a bunch of things.
There is now Twitter is good for a few things. If you want to see the real reaction or the real statement from somebody, you can generally go to their Twitter feed and find it. So you're not going through somebody else's filter.
Mhm.
This sports legend said this. Well, go to their Twitter feed and see, is it there?
Mhm.
And, find out for yourself. It's also a
Yeah.
great snapshot in time for what people are actually saying and talking about.
Yeah.
And the evolution of the language. We talked about that once before,
Yeah.
from the get-go.
Mhm.
Is that really a thing? Are people actually saying that? Well, you can go to Twitter and you can do a search for that, and every tweet that has that in it, it's right there. And you can scroll through thousands of them. And it's like, wow, this many people actually think that that's the phrase. So it does have its uses, but I'm like you, I don't use it much. I have an account mainly so nobody else will use my name, but
Right.
it's more or less a placeholder there. Uh, I'm not really a fan of it myself either because I think you're right. It's more of it's seen as more of a combat zone than anything else.
That's how I take it. Although you're right, there are benefits to it, but I just it's so constantly naggy and negative.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't like it much. But people do, and
Yeah,
whatever, and
and
to each their own.
and it is a different time. My 20-year-old self probably would have loved all the minute by minute confrontation, but my 60-year-old self is like, yeah, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, there's no solution to all that jazz. It's always constant.
Oh, big time. Rick French says, I just need to have a Geek Squad member come in and spend a couple hours configuring and fine tuning the network. Probably. It's probably something. And that's the thing that gets me. It's probably a setting somewhere.
Oh yeah.
The thing is, I shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to just plug in and go. And now Steve up here is saying there are printers that have plugins. You chose one without. Yeah, obviously. And I should have put it right back in the box and taken it back and got a different one. Thing is, I honestly thought I could get it to mesh up with the home network. But it started me on this rant about technology becoming overly complicated needlessly.
That's
I'll
right.
give I'll give you another example, okay? You used to be able to go on to, this will show you how old I am. You used to be able to go on to AOL.com or hotmail.com and set up an email account. Now you can't do it without a cell phone. And VoIP, voice over internet, or like
Yeah.
a Google Voice or something like that, nope, that's not acceptable. You have to have a cell phone. They will not let you sign up for an email account without it, and they want your number. You can't get it.
Hmm.
There are a couple of other services out there that will let you set up an anonymous email account, but they're advertising driven, and you're going to get pummeled with advertisements. But
They do
even
that. They do that so you can have so they can have your number and they can use the tracking information and your
yeah,
buying habits and
yeah,
just a bunch of things.
yeah, absolutely. But you can't just go set up an email address where just 5 years ago you could.
Yeah, they're going to
So
control everything.
they're making a very good attempt. They really are.
I mean,
So
I
I'm
mean, it's the direction everything's heading.
Mhm.
There's not going to be any
Well, make
reduction in.
make no mistake, the internet was invented and the internet is driven by advertising.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it.
Hmm.
It is 100%, but so was TV, so was radio, and so is film. There isn't a single product in any movie that isn't there because the manufacturer paid for it to be there.
Yeah.
If if Spider-Man is driving a BMW, it's because BMW wants it there, and they have paid the production company to have it
To
placed.
have it.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's see here. Um, Jim Dockrell says, I tried the free version of Spotify and couldn't get past ads to get to actual music. Delete. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where radio was good for that, because I know we say, well, radio's still free. No, it's not.
No.
Because they play one song, 3 commercials, then the next song.
Yeah. Everything is paid for in advance so that people can advertise.
I mean, the only advantage to internet-based advertising is they try to target you. So, you're not listening to hair loss commercials or, burn cellulite with our
Yeah.
miracle.
That does nobody good.
But it's all over the radio or the TV.
Right. It's better now for advertisers
Mm-hmm.
and for us too. It's better for everybody.
Yeah.
It really is because now we have free access to so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But with it comes that you're saying.
Yeah.
You know.
So, well, but it's gonna be 100% ad driven now, and it always will be. I mean, and we can use all the ad blockers in the world, but there's other goofy stuff, things underneath the hood. I'll give you an example. If I go onto the website of one of the big box home improvement stores, and I won't use the name because I don't know whose fault it is, I can search for whatever I would like to. And let's say I'm looking for a shovel. And I say, oh, I like that shovel. Let me check that one out. And I click on it. I get an error on the page that you don't have permission to view this on this server. And I'm like, what? So I try another shovel and I get the same thing.
Okay.
But if I right click on that shovel, copy link address, and open up a different browser page, Firefox, and paste it in there, it goes right to it.
Because there's battles with the different servers.
So it's something to do with Google Chrome. And I know it, but I can't figure that out.
Oh yeah, they're they are. Who knows what happens with all those updates
Mm-hmm.
that they do? You know, they just had another update, then there's another
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Who knows what's going on with those updates?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Like, what are they adding to your computer? Because you're adding stuff to your computer every time, you know,
yeah.
that updates. So
And
what is going on there?
and over time, your computer gets slower and slower and slower and slower.
Let me fix my thing so I can get comfortable here.
Well, I didn't know if you guys were having a hurricane or an earthquake or what was going on. Okay. Oh, you got to kick back and relax. I got
That's right.
you. Okay.
It's technology. It should be comfortable.
Yeah, there we go. What's the difference between an ankle bracelet and an iWatch? One collects less data about you, and it's not the ankle bracelet. Yeah, really. Yeah. Mesothelioma, that's the one that's going around on TV. If you've even written down the word asbestos, you might be entitled to compensation. Now, that's not to take away from people who have legitimately been caused illness, damage to their health, or even death from exposure to asbestos. But just reading the word isn't going to give you cancer. That's, I saw one the other day that says, if you were if you were a teenager in the 70s and you were affected by Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, you may be entitled to compensation.
That's crazy.
Boone's Farm Strawberry, it was a meme. Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, for those that don't know, was a cheap high school wine.
Oh, okay.
We called it a high school wine. Yeah, obviously, you had to be 21 to buy it in California anyway, but only high schoolers wanted it. So,
all in all, on balance, though, the internet, the advertising, like you said, goes on par with the free stuff that we get. And if I had to weigh it in the balance, without knowing all the seedy stuff that goes in the back, because there's, the problem is about that in the back. So we're getting more, but we're also less. What's the word when you're not like an unknown, lost in the crowd? We're getting less
anonymous
because they can target you directly and whatnot. So there's a pro and con there.
Well, they can to a point, because you can, if you're using Chrome, you can go incognito, or you can use a VPN, or you can use Firefox and go with a private tab. I mean, we have a VPN that we use, especially for someplace public on their Wi-Fi. We use the VPN, and I can set it for any country. I mean, my IP will come back saying that I'm in Uganda if I want it to. So they can't really track what's going on with them with that. But by the same token, there are some features that won't work if you're going through a VPN, because as VPN software improves, so does their detection. And it's like, you're going through a VPN. No, you can't use this service.
Yeah, because you're overriding their ability to collect information
Data.
about you.
Exactly.
Well, you can have a burner computer, and you can let them have all the information, but you set up a thing where you give them all the wrong interest points. Like watch tennis. And then you screw up their whole algorithm.
I noticed something. I've been joking about this here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast. and behind the scenes in Hangouts when we're talking, and it doesn't matter who we're talking to. We just get together and BS, behind the scenes here. And I've said several times that I wanted to find somebody that had one of those Echo Dots and not do a direct search for this, but just have them talk about something with a family member, just in normal conversation, and really spend a lot of time talking about this one specific topic. And the topic I used as an example is just start talking about trains, just from out of the blue. Don't do any searches for trains. Don't go on Amazon and look for trains. Don't go on YouTube and look for videos on trains. Don't do anything. Just talk about it with someone else in the
Present.
house and just see if you start getting targeted advertising for train related stuff, whether it be model trains or, spam emails about train journeys or anything like that. And
You
just see
probably
what
will.
happens. Well, I didn't notice it. I didn't pay attention. But usually within 5 days of me mentioning that, I will start having YouTube videos that have to do with trains or model railroads pop up in my suggested feed on YouTube. And I never made the correlation until the last two times I did it. The first time I said, that's funny. I was just talking about that.
That's right.
And then I said something again to somebody, you know what? I just wonder if those Echo Dots are listening in. And I'm going to start driving advertising based on your conversations you're having with friends. And then I used that train example again. And sure enough, within 5 days, I started seeing train videos pop up in my suggestions. And now I just did it again. We'll see if by next week I start getting more train advertising in my YouTube suggested
You
videos.
probably will. I mean, we're being bombarded with it, but we
Mhm.
don't realize it because we're doing other things, and it pops up on the corner and whatnot.
Yeah.
Who knows how much that affects us? We just don't know. Are some people more susceptible than others? I would assume so. But if they target things that we already want,
Yeah. Oh, I can see that because, like I said, I'm not getting, hair loss, medicine spam or videos or things like that because
yeah,
Lord knows I don't need it. I could use a little hair loss if I'm honest. Um, Meaning I need to get a haircut. Uh, but so it's targeted toward you, and you're not getting all this extraneous crap that you just don't care about. But I don't know. I guess my broader point is I was more concerned about those Echo Dots listening in on conversation because you can flat out ask it, Alexa, are you listening in on my conversations? And it'll come back with a little pre-recorded message saying, oh, we only listen in when you use the keyword to activate our systems. And I think that's a bunch of BS personally. I was curious about it. And that's why because I don't have one of those. Otherwise, I would do it myself and then just report back. But I just wondered if all of a sudden you started talking about schnauzers. Now I'm going to get schnauzer videos. If you started talking about schnauzers, but didn't search for them and, didn't
you'll get
corrupt the
them.
system, just see if your conversation with somebody in the room would trigger it and you start getting dog related advertising.
I think
Because
you'll get it.
I'm convinced they're listening in. I
Of
really am.
course. Of
So,
course. I mean, if you have a microphone and it's connected to the internet or a
mhm.
video thing or whatever,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all there to capture the ability to, what is it? What's the word? Sort of predict
Hmm.
the things that you're going to want.
Hmm.
And there goes the money exchange,
Yeah.
or at least the potential, you know.
Now, let me ask you a question. We're sitting here talking about, we kind of went dark. We're talking about surveillance and listening in and eavesdropping and things like that for purposes of advertising. Obviously, you have a camera hooked up to your computer system. When you're not using that camera, do you cover the lens?
No, I take the and I turn it towards the wall,
Okay,
and
so
I leave
you
it.
aim it towards the wall so where nobody, if somebody could hack into your camera, they wouldn't see anything.
That's right.
Okay.
But I use the audio feature
Hmm.
for Google, even
Hmm.
with the camera pointing towards the wall.
Hmm.
And I've tried just whispering, like saying, I don't know, search for shampoo in a low voice,
Hmm.
and it'll pick it right up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. See, because
In other words, the audio
mhm.
is picking up even low murmurs
Yeah, and
with it
somebody is collecting that.
with it point right and with it pointed towards the wall so that it's still picking up your.
Well, the reason I ask, I just looked up at my camera. My camera has this little black goodie that I can flip down. It's a little black cover that I can flip down in front of the lens. It came with the camera. So even the camera people admit that there is good cause for at least a little bit of paranoia on our parts. That the possibility is there that somebody could gain access to that camera. So they're giving you the option of flipping this little plastic goodie down. And thank God for that. It's not a switch or a button that I got to push 4 times and then hit it a second time and wait for the LED to flash 3 times, then hit it again. You know, it's a little plastic thing that flips down and covers the lens. I can handle that. Simple. That's all I need. Don't make it more complicated. I'm talking to you, Logitech. So,
I just flip it over,
yeah.
same difference, but you don't have to move it or anything. But the audio, you could always unplug it,
Mhm.
so there's that. But I
Mhm.
mean, you know that speakers, I don't know if you know, you probably know this, but your audio speakers,
Mhm.
depending on how it's wired, can act as microphones.
Yes. Yes.
So
Have you ever, I know you kind of got into home built, this is getting way off track. I know you kind of got into home built musical instruments. Did you ever build a stomp box?
no,
I've
I
got
never
a,
finished it. I started to, but I never finished it.
I'll send you this one. I made a stomp box. It's basically a wooden crate with a speaker inside of it that goes to a jack that you plug an amplifier cord in. And I used a bass amp with it, put a piece of carpet on top of it, just sit there and stomp on that box, and you would get percussion coming out of that amp. That speaker would pick up the vibration of your foot stomping on that. And it was actually pretty cool. Some
When you
people go all out and put like tambourines on them and stuff like that. But, I didn't go that high tech.
when you said stomp box,
Mhm.
that's what they refer to when you're talking about guitar pedals.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I thought you were talking about, but
No,
now
no, no.
I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, Jim Dockerell's got a good idea here. Focus your camera on a repeating murder scene from a movie.
Yeah,
That would be interesting. That
if
would be.
everybody around the world would do that, it would send the marketing um, people nuts.
I got a question for our chat out there. Anybody who used to watch The Walking Dead? I think it was The Walking Dead. Um, there was a song, that traveling song. I can't remember what it was called. That they used to play during that TV show that has a real creepy reputation. What was that called? I think it was The Walking Dead, but I can't
I
remember.
don't remember. I don't remember because it's been a while for me.
Mhm. I was looking for it the other day and I couldn't find the title. If anybody can remember the name of that song, I would be appreciated and put it in the chat.
I didn't know there was
Apropos
a
of
song.
absolutely nothing. Well, it had nothing to do with anything dark or scary or anything like that. It's actually a very upbeat, little ditty. But
It's sunshine.
okay, Rick French said, proud to say I have never watched that show. Okay, 2 votes for never watched that show. Okay, all right. Well, I guess I'll have to keep searching.
I've watched it, but
I never
I
did
watched
either.
a few seasons, but
Mhm.
um, how many seasons can you? I mean, I guess I get what Greg is saying about how many seasons of zombies is enough.
Well, I'm not even sure that it was The Walking Dead. It may have been another one of the zombie TV series, though, because there were a couple of them that were out there.
That's
But
been the most famous. Let me
yes,
give me half. Let me let my dog out because I
oh,
don't
okay,
want him peeing in the middle of the thing.
okay, all
I just
right,
don't want him doing that. And he's
all right, okay. It's unanimous. Motion carried. Have never seen a episode of that show. All right, okay. Well, I just I wanted to do a small prank on somebody, and that was going to be part of it. So while we're waiting for Eloy to come back, remember to hit our sponsors, namely Harneal Media, for all of your website needs. Uh, I know that was spur of the moment, Steve, and he's sitting there going, "What? Wait, what? Huh? No, I'm not ready for that." Yeah, I know. Uh,
I don't know what the song would have been.
I don't remember what it was, and I don't remember why I needed to know it, other than I was going to play a prank on somebody. But never mind. I don't even know how I got off on that tangent. Did you have something else that you wanted to talk about? Because basically, I'm tired of ranting about technology.
Um, I do want to mention. I mean, I didn't sit with it long enough, but I think it was interesting,
Mhm.
and I'll try to find it and post it in the group over on Facebook. Um, so I think the guy's Scottish, but you guys can come around and tell me or let me know over on the Facebook Trampled Underfoot podcast page
Mhm.
if you do want to see it and find it curious enough. But there's this, let's say, British guy, and he's an older gentleman. He's an archaeologist, and he is a character. He is a character.
Yeah.
He wears one of those Indiana Jones style hats.
Uh,
He wears jeans that are cut off. He's an older gentleman, bulky guy. He's got, he looks like he's been around, and he tells these quick liner jokes, like one liners, and he interviews people in the field of archaeology and stuff. And but he hits them, and these people are all serious and stuff, and he's serious too, but he's got more of a bubbly personality, you could say.
okay.
And it's hilarious as hell because he hits people. And so in one scene, he's interviewing a lady, and and the lady's talking and this and that, and says, "So tell me the truth about this. What do you think about this, and that?" And she says, "Well, I believe that it's X, Y, and Z." And then he turns to the camera and he says, "Folks, you heard it from the horse's mouth." And then the clip changes to the next thing where his jokes could be labeled as like he's calling the lady a horse face or something. It's hilarious, but he's not doing that. But his timing, it's just hilarious. He did it's just hilarious, dude. He did one where he went to which is the one that I'm talking about, and it's supposed to be serious, and it is, but he's a bubbly kind of guy. He went to Waterloo
Mhm.
in order to the dig site. They're digging up like musket balls and whatnot and
Yeah.
this and that, and they're trying to figure out, how the whole thing happened, and if they found some bones
Oh, geez.
and some horses, and they're just doing all that. But the thing is that they're studying the Waterloo battle and what they can dig up, and maybe do some DNA stuff with it too, and this and that. The French fought under Napoleon.
Uh huh.
The British fought, and so did the Germans.
Mhm.
So they're trying to at least gather some physical, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Stuff that they haven't found and whatnot. and the whole episode is basically about that, and they're trying to keep the funding. So
Mhm.
they also have like, "Hey, if you want to continue, please consider going." But it's a nice full episode of the guy just wandering about the place and this and that. And I'm sure he's got other episodes of other things. This is
Mhm.
the first time I run into him, but he was so hilarious, dude. Um, yeah,
Jim Dockrell is asking, is that Phil Harding from the Time Team?
it could be. It could be. Let me see. I'll tell you right now. I'll confirm it. Phil Harding. Yes, it is.
Okay. So Jim Dockrell knows who he is.
Hilarious guy.
Okay.
It says here, just so that you know, he was born in 1950. He's a British field archaeologist. He became a familiar face on the Channel 4 television series Time Team, as Jim Doggerel had mentioned. Harding trained on various excavations with the Bristol University Extramural Department and other bodies from 1966. He has been a professional archaeologist since 1971. Born in Oxford, and he worked in a puppet factory
A puppet factory?
until he became a full-time archaeologist. In the mid 70s, he worked in Berkshire, Hampshire, Dorset, Wiltshire,
Mhm.
Isle of Wight, and so on and so forth, doing archaeology. He's been on television. He's got
So
honors.
so he's not a minor player. This guy has made his bones. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe
Well,
intended a little bit.
in one scene in that episode, and I pick up on these little things, and maybe I read too much into it or not, but I just found it funny because the pacing that he does. In one scene, he's interviewing another lady. He says, "Oh, do you remember me? Hello," and this and that, and they're talking, and the lady's like a little reserved, and he's all bubbly and stuff. Yeah, do you remember me? And this and that, and then the conversation is at an end. He says, "Okay, I'm gonna let you go because we've got things to do," and he walks away from the camera, and the lady's face is she's like
Did that just happen?
you can see a little bit of like her face is like, boy, this guy's, they're friends, but you can see in her face. And yeah, I thought it was fun. It was fun.
What I remember about the Time Team, let's see here. Jim Dockrell says the original Time Team was an awesome show. I saw a couple of episodes hosted by Sir Tony Robinson. I remember, and that's how I remember the Time Team. It was the one with Tony Robinson, and he left after a while, and I guess he's coming back for several specials. But Tony Robinson he became famous for playing Baldric, the dumb
Sidekick.
sidekick, basically, in
Mhm.
the British TV series Blackadder.
Blackadder.
And he is anything but dumb.
He's
I
not.
mean, this guy is a very well educated man, very thoughtful man, very introspective man. He knows what he's talking about. And he's very good at what he does. He also did a very short lived series, and I'm trying to remember, I can't remember what it was called. But basically, he would take a walk. He would walk from one village to the next. And he always took a route that took him back past several historic sites. And he would give you the entire history of this area based on those sites while he was just walking.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting concept for a series, very educational. And this, he has a very easygoing manner that it's not patronizing, but you just get the feeling that this is the kind of guy you would like to sit down next to and have a cup of coffee with and spend the next 3 or 4 hours just talking about everything.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got a lot of he's done a lot of great
Mm.
docu series on history and castles and all sorts of stuff, and
Mhm.
it's a lot of fun, and he really puts you because it is true. If the person doesn't have any their heart in it,
Hmm.
it's a really easy thing to tell, and it loses that sort of like placing you in there with the person that's doing whatever the
Hmm.
the show might be, and he's really good at putting me into, and we got here, and those steps at the second floor, all this area was destroyed in this castle, and it happened because, and then he explains the thing, but come on, let's go, and he goes, and it's
Hmm.
like, wow, dude, it's that kind of stuff is fun, dude. um,
It's
some people are a little bit more straight, with
yeah.
it, but
Well, it's hard to be scholarly and confident in your knowledge without coming off as arrogant.
yeah,
Like some people, they're
it's true.
very straight laced, but there's a bit of arrogance in there, almost like they're flexing their intellectual muscles at you. And
Yeah.
Tony Robinson does not come off that way at all. He's got charisma, he's got confidence, but he's also got such an easygoing manner that it's like you've known him for your entire life and you don't know a damn thing about him, just that you're comfortable listening to what he has to say. He's not condescending at all.
Yeah.
And at least he acts like he's genuinely interested in what he's telling you.
Well,
Yeah.
when I was in my early 20s, maybe teens,
Mhm.
late teens, we would all hang out at different friends' house and stuff, and there was one group of friends, the closer of my friends at the time, and for many years. Um, and there was a guy that was renting, because what they did was that they'd all share a piece of the rent in order to be able to live on your own at that early age
Yeah,
and have all the wild parties that you could possibly
of course.
suffer through.
I think it's a law.
Um, yeah, it's, and so I'd go over, and I met that one roommate, and he invited me into his room just to whatever talk. And I said, and we went into the room, and he opened the door, and I looked at the walls, and everywhere I looked, there was Chinese, communist Chinese posters, Hitler paraphernalia, like Nazi paraphernalia, like everywhere, and books,
Hmm.
a bed tossed on the floor. It looked like the guy was making bombs for future events.
You were just waiting. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, don't sit on that. Is that ticking? Okay, no, we got to leave.
he had all that. Well, and so we would get into extended conversations about back then
Hmm.
history,
Hmm.
politics, religion, culture. And here's the thing, I was not even a little droplet of knowledge of what this guy had about everything from philosophy to history,
Hmm.
deep Chinese history, like everything.
Hmm.
And he would say weird stuff that made sense to him because of all the books that he'd read
Sure.
and whatnot. He didn't sound arrogant. He just, but you were mentioning arrogance, but he had more of a back catalog of information that he had consumed
Hmm.
and perhaps time to process than I did at all. But I had a fun, but I, and so he was totally into that whole
Yeah.
concept of looking at people in terms of population
Hmm.
as opposed to individuals. And although I couldn't place my finger on it at the time, um, there was something slightly wrong with collecting human beings into broad categories, um, without considering the individuality of human beings and whatnot. But at the time, I didn't know how to express it or process that concept.
Yeah.
And but he had the knowledge, but
Yeah.
his conclusions were, or his seeming conclusions were based around how to fix oceans of problems, full sweep, broad brush,
With a flick of a switch, huh?
right? Um, and so it goes to, a lot of knowledge, but having a solution. You could argue that maybe that's a solution if you want said outcome and whatnot. But I took a different route, and it took me years and years and years, and it's a still ongoing process. But long story short, this guy had a back catalog. He had his set ideas. He didn't mind interacting with someone that didn't know the backstory. He didn't come off as that. I didn't take it as that. But I've concluded since, even though he has the story, you could tell the story and the history, but your conclusion, well, I don't agree with his conclusions. So he believes in the individual becomes subservient to the group. And and so I found that, but the moral is that
they do if they want to. That Jim Dockrell evidently looked it up. Walking Through History. That was the name of that series I was talking about.
okay.
That's what it was called, Walking Through History. Yeah, it's weird when you meet up with somebody like that who has knowledge, but takes that knowledge in a different route.
Well,
Not
then
necessarily,
then one would.
Mm-hmm.
But you could make the argument that my conclusion is wrong and his is right.
Well, you can make any argument you want, but on a philosophical level, I guess. But still, I mean, it's whatever you're into, whatever you're interested in. But
let me give you this example real quick. It's like this. He would talk and this is one of the ones that red flagged in my mind. He would talk of the Cuban Revolution with no personal experience in it. Neither did I. That would be my
parents. You were a little bit closer to it than he was.
But I was a little bit closer and close enough where I had firsthand accounts around me all my life. And his view of it was from you could call it a book or scholarly view of it, without the intricacies of that. Hey, these are actually real people, and these implementations on a societal level affected actual real people in ways that are so specific that it would be easy to not consider. Just a simple thing on turning on your lights and there's electricity. Well, if you place a situation in a time back in history where people, and they still do to this day, you turn on the lights and there's no lights due to the fact that because the social economic situation, and it affects real people, and they're taking it from this scholarly overview, which is all they have. They have no other choice but to look at it like that.
But it's also dependent upon your worldview, because you remember what the man said: one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic.
Right.
Because there becomes a point to where the numbers just don't matter anymore. They don't mean anything anymore.
Right. It's like let's say you and I right now get involved in looking at Chinese history and stuff, whatever era, just something so specific as a part of history in a region of the world. And you and I are talking back and forth, and we're giving opinions based on things that we've read and knowledge we've gathered and this and that. We can include in that the consideration of individuals during that time period that had to deal with said circumstances. We could include that.
Mhm.
And then we'd be a little bit more healed keeled with more variations of what it meant for people, putting yourself in their shoes. But we could go the route of just looking at it as a well, yeah, like you just said, 100 million people over here, 200,000
Yeah.
over there, and this and that. And so there's two things. And so prescribing solutions
Hmm.
based on that without taking into account, like, if you imagine if you were that guy in that civilization during that time, and you're proposing the things you're proposing for that civilization from outside, but
Right.
consider yourself being would you
Well,
still choose the same
yeah.
thing, you know?
It's go back and look at the Mongols, the Mongol hordes. There are a lot of people who think, wow, Genghis Khan, what a leader, this, that, and the other. Well, the people in the villages he was ransacking weren't thinking, wow, what a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the furthest thing from their mind. So yeah, there needs to be a little bit of perspective involved there. But it's easy to do with a looking at it in hindsight because that was how many hundred years ago. And coming up on 1,000 years ago, getting right close to 1,000 years ago, because that was in the well, no, not so much. That was in the 1200s. Never mind. Uh, but the point remains that with the 21st century mentality, looking back on it with 2020 hindsight, we can come to certain conclusions that were just not even a consideration back then.
That's right.
It was conquest, and that was it.
Right.
More conquest. That's it.
Right.
So it's easy to detach yourself, especially if you don't have an emotional attachment to it, and talk
Right.
about something dispassionately.
Right. And then there's ideologies, and all that. But I guess the gist of it, there's a lot that could be said about that. The gist of it was, um, I guess the main point. There's many points, but the main point is, this: you walk into a room, and you walk into a bar, and there's all this knowledge that this person has, and you're listening to there's a lot of information. It's a lot of information, and you could be swayed to say, well, heck, that's got to be the thing, that's got to be it, because there's all this information. um or you just accept it for the sheer volume of information there is, because you're never going to dream of sitting through the same information yourself. As an example, you might be persuaded to accept um that variation of history that the person is offering you. And but he could be totally wrong in his
Right,
putting the pieces together
right,
and giving you the solution and stuff.
right.
You're okay if you say in 1563 this ship is documented sailing from A to B, and
Hmm.
there was this attack, and there were 200 people on board, and only 5 survived. Their names were this, and that,
Hmm.
and they happened to settle on the coast of so and so. And you can do that. And if they left a journal, you can add that information, and you
Right.
can even give your overview. But go ahead.
I was going to say the information is only as valuable as our ability to collate, process, and analyze that information. Because you can have all the information in the world. And I won't doubt he read all those books. But how did he process all that information? It's one thing to have facts stored into your head, but depending upon what you study, that could really warp and twist a mind into a different direction.
Mhm.
So it comes down to our ability to collate that information and process it.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
studying for because you're interested in the subject, that's great.
Mhm.
But to then bring about conclusions and paint with broad brushes, like you say this guy was doing, two words come to mind. And I would say this about anybody, about any subject, and that is crackpot. Because a true scholarly mind would not draw that conclusion. They would stay on the quest for more information. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I read something like that, or uh, when we lived over in Germany, we dug very, very deep into World War II and what actually happened because we were there where it actually happened.
Yeah.
And I was left with more questions than I had answers. I found answers to specific questions I had, but it just opened up more questions. So
Yeah.
I had no ability to come to a conclusion other than I, even though I was learning more and more, the only conclusion I could come to was I didn't know squat because there was still so much more to learn.
Mhm.
So I guess that's my only issue with something like that is
Well,
our
um,
ability to to rationalize and to collate that information.
well, yeah. So when we begin a journey, and I'm thinking in terms of myself, you've acquired so much up to that point, um, minus everything you haven't acquired,
Mhm.
um, of information, and the information you've acquired, if it's on a sliding scale, if you are adding more to, if you're adding more to it or subtracting from the information, if your goal is accuracy, it's going to always be a moving goalpost because,
Mhm.
um, looking back in time is all we have is what's left
Mhm.
in paper and whatnot. And then there's, the pushing forward of time. It's, you can have a thereabouts,
Yeah.
but beyond the thereabouts, and there's a different degrees to the thereabouts, accurate or not. Um, but then there's the extra added, your analysis of what's been processed, what you've acquired, your analysis and conclusions. Um, if you allow your conclusions to be final, um, that means that no more information is, even if it's available, um, you're not willing to correct or shift in order to grow. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. If your quest is for the truth, you can progress to a certain point, then you have to stop simply because you're either stuck on the available information or you have realized that your personal biases are starting to affect your work.
yeah. Well, your biases are always affecting.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, when you start drawing conclusions, even when all the information is not in yet, then your biases have taken over, and you need to step away. Just my personal opinion. Now, Steve also added, also remember that the winners tell the story. Very, very true. History is written by the victors,
I don't
always.
like that saying a lot. I don't like that saying because of how it's interpreted.
Well, but
You know,
when you stop and think about it, there were rarely enough losers to write the history.
no, that's see, um, I can make an argument against it that's sound,
Well,
and so there's nothing wrong with the saying per in itself, but there is something wrong with it too. So here's the thing: we don't only have, like, we are, it depends on the scenario, but throughout history we don't have just the winner's story. We have many stories. We have
right.
the Jews.
Right.
that, well, go ahead, 'cause your brain
No,
is,
I'm agreeing with you. Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm working it through.
We have the history of the Jews. We
Mhm.
have the history of the Arabs in Spain. They had to go,
Mhm.
but their items were preserved to a great deal.
Right.
But it depended on the culture and the situations, so we do have winners and losers
Mhm.
participating, pushing it forward
Mhm.
throughout time. So it's not just the winners tell the story, and that's it. Like, because
Well,
you could end up in a situation thinking that and you might be right to a degree, we're only receiving the information from
right.
the vantage point of our people or our group.
And I was going to ask you about that. In Spain, who do you think wrote the story about the quote unquote liberation of Iberia? Do you think the Moors wrote that story that the Spanish kids were learning about in school, or do you think the Spanish wrote the story
No,
that
they
the
both
Spanish
did.
kids
No,
that
we
may
have we have
that yeah, we know that now. But what I'm talking about then at the time, you know,
mm,
let's step closer to home and take the war for independence, the Revolutionary War and the War for Independence. We were taught by American teachers teaching out of American textbooks who were written by American authors. They're not telling the British side of it, they're telling the American side. So history is taught to the winners. It's taught, excuse me, taught by the winners. It's recorded by the, now it may be recorded by the losers as well, but I never heard of a British author talking about the Revolutionary War or the Civil War in any history class. They were all American teachers teaching from American textbooks written by American authors and American publishing companies. So that's all I'm getting at.
okay. So the difference between, and if Steve agrees with and it makes sense to me now what you're trying to say. If Steve agrees with that's the version that he's saying, then I would say that, well, it makes sense, and I'll say something on that. But I was looking at it in terms of all available documentation, but it requires what I'm talking about, which goes a little bit beyond the rawness of the saying, is
Mm-hmm.
that we actually can, if we're wanting to, look at the volume of different
Right.
authorities, but that's
Now,
not
now we can do that.
right.
Even as much as 30 years ago, it was much more difficult.
What do you mean?
Even as well before the internet and the ease in which we have access to information, you could go to your library and you could research in books, and but you could only research on the books they had. Then you had to go to another library and do more research, and people would actually travel around from state to state going to libraries to research a topic.
You had to
So
be
it's
totally into it.
it's easier now because we have instant gratification. I mean, you
Yeah.
just looked up uh what was his name, Phil Harding from the Time Team, and it took you less time to do it than it would to put your shoes on to go to the library.
Yeah, that
So
is a good point. So
so we have better access to the information from both sides now, but at the time it was certainly being written by the people who won that war. You weren't getting the point of view of the other side. Now we can do it. We knew the history of the Holocaust because it too was written by the winners of World War II. It
no, but when I
was
said the Jews, I mean the loss of Jerusalem,
Oh,
and
okay. You
and
going back to okay. All right,
yeah,
all right.
no, I'm looking at, that's what I'm saying. I'm looking at, and I made the distinction. I'm
Okay.
looking at the totality of history. So look,
Okay.
even in the late medieval age, there
Mhm.
existed books and there existed libraries, but I guess it would be for people that were doing that sort of thing,
Right.
or that were capable of, or wanting, or had that uncomfortable curiosity that they had to
Right.
quench or whatnot. For the general public, it's
And
hurrah hurrah for their culture
hooray for our
against the
side.
rest of the world. So
Yeah.
in those terms, I understand what you're saying, and I agree. Right now, we have a, anything we want at the
Right.
tip of our fingers. But yeah, I would just add the caveat that um, throughout history. So look, when the Spanish came to the okay, so like both things are being done at the same
Mhm.
time. So when the Spanish came to the Americas, they documented all the stuff that happened,
Mhm.
even the negative stuff.
Mhm.
And when that information got back to Spain, there were people that were outraged, believe it or not, to include the Spanish Queen,
Mhm.
the Catholic Queen,
Isabella, yeah.
and she passed a law like within a couple of years once it was found out that they were being taken, and put, and they passed laws where the Indians, the natives, could not be slaves.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, there weren't. Just because there's a law doesn't mean people aren't going to run the stop sign. But the point is
Mhm.
that it was enshrined in law, and
Mhm.
so they had to bring in other labor, which they did. So it's a, but
Right.
they wrote all those things. And I guess in hindsight, one can look and make judgment calls and whatnot. But and they weren't the only ones. There were
No,
other societies that
sure.
explained pros and cons. So there we have a better way to look at everything now because we're here and that's gone. But at the same time, we lose perspective. It's a complicated thing. I
Sure.
guess the saying, if you micro examine it, it depends on the scenario and war and civilization and
Mhm.
whatnot. But
Yeah.
you could pull up the United States, and you're right. They don't go into the fine tuning of, well,
Right.
but the British, for goodness sakes,
Yeah. I never heard a British perspective.
which
Not
we should have.
once
We should
in
have.
school. And I was highly cheesed off that, and you saw it that night that it happened when I found out that Spain helped us during the Revolutionary War, because I was never taught that in school. Not one word,
Yeah,
nothing. Never
yeah.
heard about it. And you remember how pissed off I got? Because it's just like, oh, how much else did they just kind of omit?
Well, they had admitted, in a general sense, a lot
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
the portrayal of the history is that the British were evil because they were imposing,
Mm-hmm.
and we got that yoke off of that boot off of our back.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that we got that boot off our back, and it is true that the British weren't taking the United States or the colonies under consideration, and that there were abuses
Mm-hmm.
and crossing the line, and there was a two-tier system occurring where
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't representation and all these things. But to know the British side of it, and we're not talking the common people, but to know because the regular people are never, if you think about it, the regular people are just caught up in the mayhem.
Yeah.
It's always the leaders. But the British perspective would give a wider lens. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is, for the average person sitting in school across time,
Mm-hmm.
it could be here in the United States or wherever. Um, it's more palatable for the process and the patriotism and the congealment of, to just say, listen, bad, good,
Mm-hmm.
with some information, but bad, emphasizing bad, and then good. And so I understand that it's practical, and if you are a student that excels and want to read those documents from England and sit there and do
Well,
it, then you have your people that excel.
now
But
I
for
don't
the general public, no.
now I don't know what it's like in classrooms now, but when I was in junior high, and for the greater extent high school, it it was there for instruction. It wasn't there for philosophical discussion. It wasn't the teacher standing there going, well, this was the Battle of Yorktown, this is what happened, that's what happened, what do you think? That wasn't, no, it was, this was the Battle of Yorktown. This happened. This happened. These were the generals involved. These were the troops involved, and this and that and the other, and whang bang. Oh, here's the bell, recess. And that was it. So you basically took it at face value, and that's the way it went. That was all there was to it. Now, again, that was, God, 50 years ago. So God knows how it is now. There may be more discussion,
Well, also
but
you
there
can,
was none when I was in school.
but it's a normal. It works the way it works, but you can't squeeze into somebody's head, students' heads, that plus math plus science plus this and that. So, okay, I'll just say it like this: in the Department of History, the basic thing, considering that we're a country and then there's other countries,
Mm-hmm.
the basic thing on the level of history is that, hey, this is our country,
Mm-hmm.
and those mother truckers over there, well,
Right.
let's delineate that. And then the other, so there's a, but you could, but there's
But
more to learn.
but
Well,
that goes up to university level. So yeah.
well, let me just say, but if you switch the discipline and you go to science, if you think of what you learned in science, you get the basic stuff.
Right.
But there's all this other extra stuff
Sure.
that if you were a science guy, if, like let's say we were science people,
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself more enthusiast of like history and stuff and stories and stuff like that. So I like that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just me. Maybe there's two guys somewhere on the internet doing a show purely about science, and they're like thinking, "Man, you remember in school they just taught us this. How about all the ignorance that people don't know this and
Yeah.
that?" So you get the point.
Yeah, I do get the point. And that's where specialist study comes in. And that's where you get up into university level, as I was saying, because there's only so much you can teach in a seventh grade science class. You can
Yeah,
teach this is hydrogen, this is oxygen, and this is what you get when you combine, you know, two hydrogen molecules with one oxygen molecule. You get this stuff that we drink every day, gulp.
yeah,
But that's about as far as you can go, you
yeah.
know.
Because
So,
everything
because it's
extra.
basic level, it's like you're talking about. You can't teach science, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, social studies, the US Constitution, and a bunch of other stuff and go in depth into any one of those categories. All you
Yeah,
can hope to do is spark some interest in one of those fields. And maybe that kid in the seventh grade science class looked and went, hydrogen and oxygen make water. Holy cow. And later studied a little bit more and got further into it, then went to pre med. This may be the guy that ends up curing cancer. We don't know. This could be the archaeologist that finds the next Tutankhamun's tomb. This other guy may be the one who perfects nuclear fusion for clean, limitless energy. We don't know what's going to go on. We can't see the future.
right.
So, that's where you get into scholarly study and you focus on individual subjects.
That's right.
So you go into pre-med, forget about um, French texts, forget about Indonesian goat farmers. We're focused on pre-med
And the herders that love them.
and the herders that love them. It's right. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Well, as Steve says here, as a general rule, you only learn from one side, and that's more what we were talking about, what we meant by that. And I agree with Steve 100%. You're taught one side of the story,
Yeah.
and
If you're talking about school. Yeah.
yes, I am talking about school, but the majority of people never go any further than that. The majority of people, they take in all of that information, figure out what they want to do, and then they go specialized in that. If your mind is made up when you get out of high school that you're going to go into the IT field, you could give a damn about literature. You could give a damn about painting or sculpture. you're focused on the IT field. If you want to be an electrician, you're focused on that. You could give even less of a damn about literature or sculpture, unless it's how to light it and how to run the wiring to that light. You know, so it, enough of a nutshell to where you may not win Jeopardy, but you're not drooling in a corner either. You know, so have a good night, Rick. Let's take that as our cue and go ahead and land the plane. What the heck? Because we're starting to talk in circles. We're saying the same things.
Yeah, well, I just want to say this other thing. When I was at in a debate thing
Hmm.
last week, talking about some. I think it had to do with. I forget what it had to do with, but it was around the subject of. I forget right now. But I do recall explaining this, which I've explained before. In any conversation and in any topic, um, unless you're reading a book that expands on an idea,
Hmm.
in any short conversation or whatever interaction, a human being, you and I, can only say one word at a time that comes out of our mouth that forms a sentence, that can form a paragraph with a concept in mind
Right.
that's coming from our brain. We are not off when I say something to you or vice versa, you to me. We are not offering each other the complete information that we have. We're only giving chunks of information, and the chunks of information are crossing, and each person has to process it, and maybe they offer
Hmm.
a response specific, or maybe they go on their own tangent,
Hmm.
because that's how human beings interact, and more or less we're working it out, the concepts of whatever we're talking about, and we're sort of like hammering it out, whatever idea is floating in the air. um, and it's always dirty business because we're not computers. um, it's there's a little bit of give and give and take, and sort of like massaging the concepts into existence and trying to work on it. And so with that comes a level of error.
Hmm.
If you think of a truth as something pure,
Hmm.
or a concept, or what, a topic,
Yeah.
there's always a lot left out of a conversation because we just simply can only work a few things at a time and
Right.
offer it back. And
Right.
so that's a human limitation.
Well, and it's two ways because you can only absorb so much at a sitting. You know, there's a reason why college courses or high school classes or junior high or even elementary school, there's a reason why each segment is only a certain amount of time because after a while your eyes start to glaze over. Your brain just can't keep absorbing information at the same rate. The longer you sit there, the less you listen, the less your brain will let you absorb more information. You can only take in information for a certain amount of time. Then you need a break. You got to get away. Then you can come back. But you are only physically, and it's different for everybody, but you're only
Yeah,
physically able to take in information for a certain amount of time. And as you say, having a conversation between two people, there are going to be you can only transmit what you know at a certain pace, and inevitably there's going to be an impasse. There's going to be
right.
a budding of ideas or ideals,
Yeah,
you know, because it could be something as innocent as, well, yeah, Fred showed up in his white Ford Pinto. What are you talking about? He had a green Chevy Vega.
right.
You know, there's going to be something there that's going to sidetrack, or a disagreement's going to ensue.
Yeah.
So, but
But
yeah.
but 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 I will. But I think it's a lot of people. I think it's a known thing.
Mhm.
It's an important process to undergo if you're with the right people that are willing to go there, because it is like hitting metal with a hammer and flattening it out. If both parties or three people or whoever's involved is coming at it um, with the ultimate goal of acquiring a clearer understanding.
I'm just getting ready to say that. It depends upon the
Yeah,
objective of the conversation to begin with.
if it's based on, if it's and there's no taking out
Mhm.
things such as ego and things such as staunch, there, but there is self checking and in that process of stuff. So if people are generally on the up and up and they're coming to a conversation about whatever topic, trying to get to a place, you could kind of walk away from it having learned a little more or curious enough to rethink the things that you may have gotten wrong or
But
right, after the fact.
that goes against the grain of a debate. A debate is both parties are certain of their position and they're out to present their idea. They're not there to come to a mutual understanding or an agreement. They're there to not so much be confrontational, but they're there to make this claim, prove that it's correct, counter that claim, prove how it's incorrect.
Yeah, that is the
That's
type.
what that's the whole purpose. It's not to come together for understanding.
I disagree with you, and in part, the true purpose of a debate is for so, and people watching the debate and people involved in the debate, the pro is to arrive at the clearest answer to something that bothers people, the clearest message that can come from it. The idea is to better everybody in the interaction. Now, that may not be the case for things such as political debates or things that we consider debates, but the true knowledge based or seeking knowledge, the debate is, you, unless it's rhetoric for the sake of rhetoric and winning, which is what you're saying, that belongs to politics, that belongs
Hey,
to popular mags and whatnot.
I love that we're debating the definition of debate. In Oxford languages, a debate is a formal discussion on a particular topic in a public meeting or legislative assembly in which opposing arguments are put forward, or it's to argue about a subject in a formal manner. It's not to come together, it's to express opposing viewpoints.
um the reason you okay, I'm going to press you on this
Okay.
because I am confident in this, and you apparently are confident in that, in your point. I agree with that definition, but it doesn't
Mhm.
take away from. So if you type in what is the goal of debating an idea, if you type in what's the goal of debating an idea, um, and you look through that, the goal is to arrive at at a place that's clearer for everybody involved, because you are going through the process of checking each other, and that's if you're on the up and up and being sincere people. The object of debating is not to win unless you're um, using the rhetoric as the people that back in Greece did. What were their names? The sophists.
Mhm.
If you're doing sophistry, if you have that philosophy, that's the philosophy of winning by all means necessary. That is not beneficial to society. What's beneficial is that, oh, you're right about this. Oh, you're wrong about that. Yeah, you're right. I missed that, and you arrive at a better truth.
Okay. I'm sticking with the strict definition of the word. Now that may be the ideal that some people hold, but debate is either a noun or a verb. Debate as a noun is contention by words or arguments, or a regulated discussion of a proposition, or a formal discussion of a motion. And this is Merriam-Webster Dictionary. As a verb, debate is to argue about, to engage in an argument, to turn over in one's mind, or to think about. In other words, I'm debating on what color to paint the house. As an intransitive verb, it's to participate in such an argument or to contend in words. Synonyms are fight, argument, contention. There's no coming together in any of those.
Okay, so I don't disagree with any of those definitions, but you're missing my point completely.
No. I do get your point, but that is a subjective view of what a debate should be, is what I'm getting. Because every debate I have ever seen, and it didn't matter what the topic was, whether it be political or just debate in high school that we were forced to go sit in an auditorium and watch. One side had one viewpoint and another side had another viewpoint. They never came to any form of agreement, but each one of them had a claim to make, and they argued their position in an attempt to not so much prove the other wrong, but prove theirs right.
In the process of debating,
Mm-hmm.
and by the way, so let me hold that for a second. The idea in the realm of philosophy, which is to acquire knowledge, understanding, the process of debating was used to hammer out inconsistencies from one party or the other or various parties to arrive at, to clear the wreckage of inconsistencies, wipe them away as much as possible so that the gem that was polished in that debate is gleaming brighter than the, I guess you'd say, the rough stone that it started as. That
Okay.
is the philosophical aim in a debate. Now,
Okay.
within that, you have ego, and all
Right.
that. Now, well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Now you're using that in a transitive verb sense. In other words, to like I said about mulling it over in your mind. Okay. These two sides are mulling things over. And let's see, Miriam's definition: to turn over in one's mind, to think about something such as different options in order to decide. That is also considered a debate.
Yeah.
But that's a transitive verb. So yes. Okay.
So
Okay.
so yeah. But in the philosophy world, there was a group of people, the sophists,
Mm-hmm.
and those people were only interested in winning. And
Yeah.
so their idea for debating, because there was debating in that world, and the idea was that I was explaining,
Mm-hmm.
but this philosophy came out, which is rampant today, which is arguing in order to win,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether you're right or wrong, by using trickery through words
Mm-hmm.
in order to, I guess, um, surpass your opponent by your skills in rhetoric and take the day, take the win.
Yeah. Mask
And
or manipulate facts or truths or half truths or even unproven things, it just in order to win in the moment.
right, so we see that in politics. We see that on
Oh yeah.
what do you, these political
Well,
shows on
we see
TV.
it in day-to-day life. Every time you hear, because I'm the dad, that's why, or because I said so.
Right, right. So
That ends the debate.
so we're used to that,
Yeah.
and the acquiring of a better truth. Like, let's imagine it's never going to happen, but let's say the two presidential candidates, whoever they are, Joe Blow and Bobby
Frank.
whatever, and it just so happens that Joe does happen to be the first name of one. But let's say they come into a battle. It would be crazy if they said, "Well, you know what, contestant one, that was a good point. You know what? Yeah. So we agree, and when you do see it on occasion in things that don't matter, that don't
Hmm.
upset the voter base. But imagine if they agreed on something that one side totally it wasn't part of their platform, but the others it was, and the people that see their man agreeing that, you know what, yeah, we're all wrong about that. That makes total sense. You'll never see that because that would
No, you
shift.
can't. I mean, it would never
Right.
happen.
Right. So long story short,
Too
they
late.
what's that?
I said too late. We've already gone 2 hours. There are no short stories here. Go for it, man. Go for it.
Okay, so long story short, we have more of the rhetoric um thing of the debate. And yes, it's idealistic that two people would sit down, but people do it like we do it all the time. We may walk away with certain
But
ideas that we kept,
hmm
but we do, like, I have had my mind change on any number of things, or
yeah,
a shifting of my point of view because you injected something that I may not have appreciated at the time because it caused the discomfort of having to reevaluate something.
hmm
And I've had to go and reevaluate some things. But at the end of the day, and I may be disgruntled about it initially, I may be, I may kick and scream about it. I may walk away and grind my teeth on it. But the ultimate thing involves me having to reevaluate, and it is a win-win,
yeah,
even though it's an uncomfortable thing at the moment. So I think that that's
yeah.
healthy, and I may and you may
Well,
arrive at a thing where you say, no, you know what, that's wrong regardless. So but the effort is there as opposed to,
but nobody likes to have their world exploded in front of them and go, wait a minute. You
no,
know,
nobody likes that.
yeah, nobody likes that because it causes introspection. How have we been lied to for so many years? Well, were you lied to, or did you just take that little bit of information and run with it? You know, so, but
Yeah,
then again, we're not debating; we're just discussing. And to me, that's a completely different subject.
it is different because we're throwing ideas out there.
Uh-huh.
um
And just inviting anybody who may be interested to come along for the ride.
yeah, essentially.
So,
Well, I think, is there anything else you'd like? I think that's, I prefer the thing, that we're how we're explaining it, than me. And by the way, I prefer that not only with you,
mhm.
as friends, and with everyone here. I prefer that like, I don't want to take the win
Yeah.
for the sake of taking the win in some sort of this and that tit for tat, let's say, because I
Well,
don't find, I've learned that there's no pleasure in that.
well, that ain't what this is about, you know? I mean, I'm sure we could find a subject where you and I completely disagree. I'm sure we could find that.
Lizard people.
But no, I think we both agree on that. But but what's the point? Who benefits from that? You know, neither one
Yeah.
of us. I
No.
mean, it would make for titillating television, I guess you could say, or entertainment if we both just
Yeah.
started calling each other names, but that would be all it would be for. And it would be 100% BS.
Sophistry is the most disingenuous. And by the way,
Mhm.
within us exists levels of sophistry, levels
Mhm.
of all these
Oh,
things,
sure.
because we're human beings. But
Well,
I'm talking about full throttle accentuation, because
mm,
within any battle over an idea, you have all these different metrics
sure.
occurring because we're human freaking beings.
Well,
But
nobody wants to look like a fool,
well,
and
yeah,
nobody wants to be made to look like a fool, especially on a platform where potentially anybody in the world could see it. So you might as well say in public. So nobody wants that. So yeah, you're gonna get pushback. And I'll admit there's a certain amount of little pleasure in there in watching some people squirm on TV or watching some people squirm in a video when they're getting nailed to the wall and they're like, you know, some poor guys I almost feel sorry for, even if I don't like them.
But wait a second.
But then again, there is a certain amount of, I don't know, I guess voyeuristic pleasure in seeing that.
But wait. Let me ask you. When somebody's pinned, so I've seen a lot of videos like that, and I agree with you. I totally love it. But here's the bit. No, I love it when somebody gets pinned because of their. But here's the thing. It's because the reason I love it is because the person getting pinned was on about something that's not accurate, and the person that came around and set them straight gave them full throttle fire and fury.
Yes, it's this, and this, and here's the
Right.
data, and here's the proof, and here's the evidence. Now what?
Yeah. Okay. So that I have zero problem with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the guy that came up and laid the law down on the other guy is doing it using lies and trickery that eventually will come out in one fashion or the other, then there's no pleasure in that.
No, obviously not. But to me, I relate it to the guy. You see these videos on YouTube all the time. The MMA guy who is all cocky and goes in talking trash and talking smack. They get in the ring, and the first punch, he's down for the count.
Right.
You know, I love it when the bully gets knocked out.
I love it too.
I love it when the bully loses. I don't like bullies.
Yeah, me
I
neither.
despise bullies. And when the bully gets it in the end, I take some pleasure in that. And maybe I shouldn't, but I do. You know.
No,
So,
I get it too. I get the pleasure as well because yeah, I get the yeah. Well, you know what? Let's stop agreeing because we
okay.
agree.
Who says we agree, damn it? No, I'm let's wrap it up.
Um
Eloy's name up there makes me want cornbread and fried potatoes. You have cornbread and fried potatoes with white bean soup, Frankie?
I'd eat cornbread with white bean soup,
I
but
would eat cornbread, but where'd the fried potatoes come in?
it can't go wrong with any sit down meal.
Look, I think I'm part potato and the other part's cabbage. So it's kind of genetic with me. I'm a potato cabbage kind of guy. I get it. But with white bean soup, yeah, I'm all about cornbread, but I don't know where the fried potatoes come in. Yes.
But fried potatoes is potato chips, no?
I mean, no, you've never had sliced potatoes fried in like bacon fat?
Are you talking about like just like shredded like what do you call it?
Hash browns? Well, that's I guess that's fried potatoes as well. But
Yeah.
you've never peeled a potato and then sliced it and thrown it into a hot skillet of fat, like
I've
bacon
lived
fat or.
I've lived almost 50 years, Mark. And you're asking me that question?
Yes, I am because you sound confused about the concept.
Well, I don't call it fried potatoes.
Oh,
I
okay.
call it hash browns or
Well,
because you can
no,
make.
but hash browns are shredded or they're diced.
So
There's a
you're
bit of
saying potatoes au gratin?
no, that's baked casserole.
Oh, that is baked. Yeah. So you're saying potato chips?
Well, some places they call them home fries. Well, just imagine a potato chip that's about that thick and isn't crunchy like a potato chip. It's crispy around the edges, but it's fluffy in the middle.
So French fries.
The same concept, but not quite.
Oh, dude. See now you're just what is it called? Splicing hair. No, what's it called?
Splitting hairs.
Now you're splitting hairs, dude. And all this
Boy.
due to
Oh,
Frankie's freaking evil combination of
I
food.
don't know where the fried potatoes came in from.
Yeah, but if they tell me fried potatoes, I think to myself, what do you mean, French fries?
No, I mean just. Oh man, why you got to do this to me?
If you
I
say fried potatoes, I'm thinking French fries. Or if you're talking about some hash brown,
No, not hash browns.
Yeah, I'll have to see what you're talking about
Well, that's what I'm trying to pull up a photo.
because I don't know.
Uh,
I mean, maybe the name is the problem, but I and by the way, we're still talking about a potato that's frying, right?
yes,
So, I mean,
an image. Well, okay, this will have to do. And I don't believe I am showing somebody a photo
of a fried potato.
of fried potatoes, pan fried potatoes. That's it.
I've never done those.
That's fried potatoes. And
Yeah, I've never done it like that.
okay. Well, that is so Anglophile. I'm related to it.
To me, that I would eat it my whole life. I'd either cut them in little cubes.
Hmm.
I would cut them as French fries.
Hmm.
We're talking frying the potato.
Hmm.
Um, or I never made them myself, but I would eat them well, I guess that wouldn't be either that because that's baked. The I was
Yeah.
gonna say the au gratin. So it's either those two that I can even think about. But
Hmm.
that slice like that,
Yep.
no,
Yep.
no.
That was common. I grew up on that. I grew up. Now, sometimes mom would slice the potato lengthwise so that instead of having the round coins, you had halves. But that was usually on a big potato where you would have slices like that if you, if she didn't. Just slice it
Interesting.
up, fry it in the bacon fat or in the sausage fat, and have that
Never,
with eggs in the morning.
never had that
The only
like that.
difference between that and hash browns, some people make hash browns with diced potatoes, like you're talking about,
Hmm.
and other people shred them, like through a cheese grater.
Yeah,
To me, now the way I was brought up, the shredded through a cheese grater, that's hash browns. If you dice them up, the potatoes, and then throw in onions and peppers, that's O'Brien potatoes.
interesting. To me that's as foreign as
Well,
a British diner in Miami.
dude, I'm 61 and I have never eaten a plantain. Wouldn't know what the heck to do with one if you handed it
And
to me.
I'm totally used to plantains.
I've never had one.
A fried plantain with a meal is freaking
Mhm.
awesome.
Now, how
But then
about
again,
now that we're off on another tangent here after 2 hours? How about fried cabbage?
I've had boiled cabbage. I've had I've had coleslaw.
You've never fried cabbage in butter in a skillet?
I've fried I've but rare. I've
Mhm.
gotten cabbage and I have fried it and ate it with whatever other dish that meat or whatever as a
Mhm.
side dish. But it's not a common thing.
Yeah, it's very common in this house. Very common in this house.
Yeah, it's not a common thing. I eat it
Mhm.
and I like it, but it's not a staple
It,
by
it,
any means.
and here we get into again, mom and grandma were from Texas, so a lot of this is Southern influence. But Linda isn't um, Southern California, but a lot of potatoes, a lot of fresh vegetables, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. I mean, Swiss chard. The southern side says collard greens. The northern side says spinach. I mean, lots of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but yeah, fried potatoes is just one of those things. I mean, she'll make that with, like, we'll have a smoked sausage or kielbasa with fried potatoes with onions and mushrooms, and just give it a good go, and I tear it
Oh,
up.
yeah, it's if you go into that,
Hmm.
our different styles are very traditionally
Hmm.
because so that stuff wasn't typical in my household by
Okay.
any stretch of the imagination.
Linda says, but her grandma was from Kentucky, so it counts. Okay, yeah. So you got you got. Steve says cabbage is good for feeding to real food. A pox upon you, my friend. We don't need that kind of negativity in our lives. Cabbage is good for you and tastes great. Fry it in butter. Trust me.
Oh, it's freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm. Fry it
Uh,
in butter. Same with Brussels sprouts.
well, Arthur, you probably know already because we've talked about it, but it's rice,
Mm-hmm.
white rice.
Mm-hmm.
The traditional thing is white rice, whatever meat you're having, or fish.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a steak, it could be ground beef, it could be shredded beef.
Mm-hmm.
There's proper names for it in Spanish, but it could be any of those beefs, or it could be pork chops or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have a salad, which would be sliced tomatoes, plus maybe onions or whatever combination, and then they would sprinkle a lime over it with some salt and vinegar, and that was your salad. You'd have bread or breadsticks on the table.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have
Yep. That was.
plantains as the sweet thing, and so that was the combination typical of us here.
We had a meat, a starch, and a vegetable, and sometimes a green salad off to the side.
Yeah,
But you had like a meat and rice on occasion. That wasn't a staple. But it would be something like macaroni and cheese or potatoes or something of that nature. Maybe a squash, a winter squash. And then a vegetable, we're talking corn, broccoli, asparagus, something like that. Um, Let's see. Steve says, Mark, I live with a Southern cook. She makes cabbage a lot of ways, and I hate almost all of them. Yeah, but Steve, come on. You don't like anything good.
but Steve,
But
after an hour after cabbage, you can whistle Dixie,
yeah,
and you don't have to,
like white bean soup don't make you whistle Dixie.
and you don't have to see. Yeah, see, I didn't have to add. I was going to add the extra just to make it real clear what I was trying to get at here, but it's very obvious.
Reminds me of the joke I heard on All in the Family when they were in the grocery store uh, buying canned goods, and Edith has got a can of corn and she's shaking it next to her ear, and she has another can of corn and she shakes it. And he says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Well, I'm shaking it, and the more corn is in there compared to the liquid, the deeper the sound is." And he says, "Does that really work?" She says, "Yeah." And she shows him, and he shakes a couple, and she says, "This one has more corn in it, and this one has more liquid in it." And he went, "Oh, okay." And he walks over and he picks up a can of beans and he shakes it. She goes, "Oh, Archie, beans don't make any noise." He says, "Yeah, not in the store, they don't."
They were.
And this is back in the early 70s.
He was. He was always. What's funny is he was always classy, right? He always had
Yeah.
hope with it. I could picture him too with his face. Fucking, it's funny.
All right, we got to get out of here.
Yeah. All right. All right. All right, everyone. Listen, we go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. Come visit us. Um, we also have a site over on Facebook. You can check that out. I'll look for that video if any of you are interested, or you'll run across it if you're a member of that over on Facebook. We have a website called trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Check out our past episodes over there. And we're also sponsored by
Harneal Media, your web solution. If you're looking to either establish or increase your web presence and give your fledgling business more legitimacy, there's no better way to do it than with your own website. And Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media will take care of you. He's got you covered. So look him up online. I believe Steve has put a link in the chat over here. If you're watching this on replay, click on that link, get over there to Harneal Media and check them out. It is 100% personalized service. You're not dealing with a nameless, faceless entity somewhere in a call center. You're dealing with Steve, and he will square you away. That's Harneal Media, Harneal Neal media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot podcast.com.
All right. Well, thank you for that. You guys be safe. We'll catch you next time. Enjoy your week. And yeah, do the things you enjoy. What the heck, right? Peace.
Cabbage.